Usually when we make a Synths That Time Forgot video, it's about a vintage synth. Today we're going to talk about a modern synth that's on the market as we speak, the Prologue. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Zach Marr from Alamo Music here in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn your notifications. This is our Alamo Sound Lab channel where we talk about all things music tech related. And today we're talking about the Korg Prologue in the lens of Synths That Time Forgot, because this thing is a sleeper, and I really believe it's cursed in a sense, because a number of things have happened in the production lifespan of the Prologue that kind of seems to have sealed its fate as a synth that will be viewed as a really good synth that Korg made that wasn't appreciated at the time it came out and did not do commercially well. And while I don't have numbers from Korg on how many of these they've sold, judging the reviews that you find online and kind of comparing it to other price points of synth in that same category, it definitely seems to be less sought after, less bought than other synths in that category. And I really wanted to talk about why I think that is. So one, the release was a complete disaster. When it came out, there was a ton of quality control issues, which is not super normal for Korg. So kind of uncharacteristically, there was a ton of quality control issues, which is interesting because this is a flagship synth. It has made in Japan for the key bed action, which is, I don't think the whole thing's made in Japan, but the action is made in Japan. And you know, the Japanese pride themselves on craftsmanship. And so for this to have been released in kind of the state it was released in, and with all the quality controls that when it first came out, if you read through the threads on Reddit and various synthesizer forums, people had a really bad experience when the synth came out the gate. It had tuning issues. It needed a firmware update to fix tuning issues and a litany of other things. And so really a ton of people that were super excited and bought it out the gate had a horrible experience and returned it. And I think it just killed the momentum for the synth initially. And there was just so much bad residual press in these kind of online communities where people go to get information that I really think it put a severe damper on the Prologue. Second, really interesting, there are some choices that they made in this design that really are hard to fathom. So some of the features from the Minilogue XD did not find its way to the Prologue. They took features away. Same with the Minilogue, some features did not come over. It took random features from the Minilogue and the Minilogue XD selectively, neither in their entirety, and then added some additional features, but not enough to offset people's confusion as to why loved features on the Minilogue XD, for instance, the sequencer, or the Minilogue's ability to switch between a 2-pole and a 4-pole filter. You know, certain things just didn't make their way to the Prologue, and you would think on a flagship synth, you would find that. I think that confused a lot of people. Also, it has a single LFO instead of multiple LFOs. Again, not normal on a flagship synth. So really people were confused about the progression from the Minilogue up to the Prologue and the different iterations. And there was not a lot of kind of marketing around the fact that the filter is a different filter than you find in the Minilogue. And it's voiced differently than the Minilogues. And so there wasn't a lot of, it just seemed like, okay, they only put half the things in and added a few random things, so people were confused. And I still don't find that information. It took me a while to kind of, yes, it does have a different filter. When you play it, it sounds different than a Minilogue. And really a lot of those things have been ironed out in this synth today. And I wanted to talk, so those are the things that I think that led to its kind of journey into what I think will be a synth that time forgot. But I want to also kind of predict, or maybe it will have a resurgence. Maybe it will gain popularity. Oh, shoot, I forgot. The third thing that I think is dooming the synth. So apparently in Europe, the type of power that this uses, this type of power supply, has been banned. And so you can't buy these in Europe right now. And maybe they'll redesign it with a new power supply so that Europe can buy it again, but it's been banned. And so I think that, again, horrible luck. I don't know what kind of karma Korg got that resulted in the Prologue. It's kind of bad luck, a series of unfortunate events. But it seems like it is definitely not had an easy road. And that's funny because Korg is otherwise hitting it out the park with their Mini Korg 700 FS, their ARPs, their 2600 re-releases, the ModWave, Op6, WaveState, a lot of really cool stuff coming from Korg that's being well received. The Prologue seems like it's a giant miss. But let's talk about what is awesome about the Prologue and why I think if it is a synth that time will forget, it's too bad, because really it's a beautiful sounding synth and it's got its own tone and its own character. It's VCO based, which is a little more organic and kind of just less controlled than some of the DCO based synths that are in the same price point. 16 voice, which is impressive for VCO. It's bitimbral again, which it gives you a lot of sound sculpting possibilities with this Korg sound. The low frequency compressor that is not on the 8-voice version really is magical. I think that really, when I listened to the factory patches on the 8, I was not super impressed with the low frequency compressor. It really, I understand, I'm like, this makes more sense to me sonically. That really adds a lot of magic to this unit. It's got an amazing range from low end to high end. There's some crazy patches in here that I shook the building when we were playing it during the demos. I was like, whoa, what is that? What's going on? And it was literally coming out of this. And so very hi-fi sounding. And I would classify this as, it doesn't sound Korg. It doesn't sound like sequential. It doesn't sound like Moog. It's definitely got a Japanese sound, like late 70s, early 80s Japanese sound, and it kind of a mix between Yamaha, Korg, and a little Roland. I would say more Yamaha than anything else, than some Korg, and maybe a little Roland. But definitely an interesting voice, its own thing. I don't think there's anything that sounds quite like it on the market besides the Prologue, and so I really think it's a shame that it's not getting more love. It's also not priced insanely. It's like $1,500, $1,600 kind of street price. So very interesting. The other thing that really didn't take off, but I think is fascinating, is that they provided a whole developer kit for people to be able to program their own oscillators with the third digital oscillator and their own effects. And that community hasn't exploded like I think Korg thought it might have. I think it's just so niche and kind of out of the norm for a lot of people that there's not maybe a huge amount of people that know how to do that. But there is oscillators and there are effects that you can download and put into this and kind of further customize and further get different sounds out of it. Really, some really cool ones that have been put out. Haven't got to play with a ton, but definitely that was kind of like the innovative feature that Korg really was banking on for this polysynth that didn't take off. Again, maybe that's reason 4 why it hasn't been successful. But again, for the money, I think it's great value when it's competing against. It's beautiful, the wood finish and the black kind of surface. It's like, it just looks hand-built. It looks beautiful. It's a shame that it is falling into this category of synths that time forgot. I wanted to give it some love in this video, so let's listen to it and I'll conclude with some final thoughts. So there you have it, the Korg Prologue 16 voice. I'm curious to see if this stays on the market for much longer. I'm curious if Korg has something in the future, maybe the epilogue, maybe all the feedback they've gotten about the Prologue will result in this amazing new flagship synth from them. But I still think this one is pretty amazing, and I'm really curious to see what Korg does next on flagship kind of analog synthesis. They've been knocking it out of the park with their digital synths lately. I've really enjoyed the mod wave, wave state, and op6. And I like the Prologue. I have to say, I think it's a great synth. And you can pick them up for cheap still because people, again, it's in this category of being forgotten about. So don't, just because the stuff that you read out there is negative about this instrument, give it its fair shot. You should play one, especially if you like late 70s, early 80s Yamaha Korg sounds. It's definitely, to me, reminds me the most of that. So thanks for watching. If you have any comments, leave them below. We'd love to hear from you there. If you didn't already hit subscribe, we'd love to see you here back again. If you'd like to talk more, come visit us at alamomusic.com. And I hope you have a very musical rest of your day.